Hey Kentucky, this is Matt Jones tonight. A man with ambitions to lead the state is my co-host. Representative Rocky Atkins and I will talk about everything from developments in Frankfort to UK basketball. And we'll discuss why he has entered the 2019 Kentucky governor's race. That's all next here on Hey Kentucky. Welcome everybody to Hey Kentucky, presented by Wendy's and Sullivan University. We are happy to be joined today by State Representative and gubernatorial candidate Rocky Atkins, who is my co-host. Rocky, great to see you.
Man, thanks for having me. Good to be on.
We got a lot to talk about, but let's get started. We'll look ahead to Kentucky's 2019 General Assembly. Senate Republicans, who now enjoy a supermajority from the general election, are working on priorities for the 30-day legislative session. They say they want to talk about school safety, tax reform, and legislation that encourages job creation. Senate President Robert Stivers said he wants to add murder to Kentucky's hate crime law. Rocky, the Republicans are in charge. You all have taken a couple of seats back. Yeah. Do you expect this to be a very monumental legislative session?
Well, I don't know about monumental. I can tell you that taking 2 seats back, we're in a role as a minority of being the loyal opposition, having a voice for those that don't have a voice when we need to, but also reaching across the aisle on legislation that we think is good legislation. You mentioned one, school safety is one that we should be able to work across the aisle. Matter of fact, in the last session, Will Coursey had a piece of legislation that we passed through the House, I think 89-1, to put more school counselors in schools and do some other things around school safety, but went to the Senate and never made it out of the Education Committee. That should be a very bipartisan issue.
I would think that's something that we'll get. What about the more controversial stuff? They passed, obviously, right to work last time. There was the charter schools. Do you worry about the charter schools or any of that kind of coming back, the funding for them?
Well, the Commissioner of Education has said he'd like to see funding for charter schools, which I think is terrible for Kentucky. I think it's terrible for public education. We've already got an underfunded system in Kentucky, and to try to bring charter schools, which will divert public education dollars out of the public classroom over to a private for-profit corporation, I think that's wrong. I don't think it's good for Kentucky. I don't think it's good for the children of Kentucky, and I don't think it's good for the future of Kentucky either.
Yeah, well, I'm sure you'll have many chances to weigh in. Now, when lawmakers return to Frankfort in January, there's also going to be a shakeup in leadership for Senate Republicans. 2 veteran committee leaders have been replaced. Alice Forgy-Kerr is out as chair of Economic Development, Tourism, and Labor, and Tom Buford will no longer lead Banking and Insurance. Now, Kerr and Buford were among 5 Republicans who voted against Matt Bevin's pension bill, but they say that has nothing to do with the changes in the leadership. Now, I sometimes smell things, Rocky, and it seems weird. Only 2 people lost their positions, and it's 2 that voted against the pension bill. Do you think they are getting payback for being against Bevin?
Well, I'm not on inside the room when they're making those decisions, but I can tell you those 2 members are very moderate Republicans. They've reached across the aisle. They've worked with us on different initiatives over the years, to be very honest. Now, they were removed from committee chairs, but put on Appropriations and Revenue, which is not a bad place to be either. But to be a committee chairman and be removed, you know, there has to be some reason there, I would think, and especially those 2 individuals, the votes that they made were not in line with the Republican Party or their leadership.
Will the Bevin and the folks, will they try to do another pension bill, do you think, this term?
Well, I think it's going to be interesting to see first how the court rules on Senate Bill 151, which is a terrible bill. I stood up in that committee and I said, you know, you don't have an actuarial analysis.
We played your speech here. But do you think they'll do another one?
Well, it's going to be interesting to see if leadership of the House and the Senate wants to tackle that again and bring thousands of people back to Frankfort, Kentucky during this short session. They will be back. Yes.
Now, of course, there's an election for Kentucky governor in 2019, and the incumbent is going to be campaigning after a year when his popularity took a huge hit. It's no secret Republican Matt Bevin has generated a lot of ill will, and when he made plenty of comments about the state's teachers during the debate over solving our pension crisis. But Bevin has recently doubled up, saying, quote, breaking the backs of the teachers union in this state is going to be one of the best things that ever happened. Meanwhile, the pension reform law is waiting for the state Supreme Court. Rocky, do you agree with Governor Bevin that they have broken the backs of the teachers union? And if so, is it a good thing?
No, it's a terrible thing, to be very honest, and it's nothing more than another shot from him toward public education and those professionals that teach in the classrooms every day and work in basically the education community of Kentucky. I think that KEA basically stands up and represents teachers. They represent kids in the classroom. They are a good voice for those that may be in the classroom that can't be in Frankfort every day. So I think his comment is nothing more than another shot at public education, another, I think, discredit of what teachers do every day and the disrespect that he's showing for teachers in the education community and others across Kentucky, I believe is completely wrong, and that is the reason that that disrespect is bringing thousands of people to Frankfort like I've never seen before.
Let me ask you this. They did have thousands show up, but they said they would remember in November, and only 2 seats changed hands. Were you disappointed?
Well, I'm disappointed, but if you look where we won in areas where we have not won before. Here in Lexington, in the suburban areas, you know, you had a seat.
Were you disappointed there weren't more?
Oh, there's no question. We expected to pick up more seats, and the races across Kentucky somewhat got nationalized. The president came in. He still has some popularity. Millions of dollars spent on negative advertisement that people across Kentucky.
But do you think you will do better? I mean, like, is there...
Well, let me tell you what I have seen. I've seen the energy continue to build. Even though we were not as successful as we would like to be, we had great candidates all across Kentucky. And as I continue after that, I still see those crowds still coming, new faces still involved.
All right. Now, Rocky made some headlines of his own with his recent announcement to run for Kentucky governor next year. Now, at this point, only one other person's in the race, Attorney General Andy Beshear. But we do expect other Democrats to get in. An Owensboro newspaper asked Rocky about Beshear's early start on fundraising. And Rocky, you criticized Andy Beshear, saying he shouldn't have been fundraising for the race because it diverted money from the legislative races. Do you stand by that now?
I still stand by that, even more strong today than I did then. It was wrong then and it was wrong now. To be raising money for a race next year when we had our candidates on the ballot this year was self-serving, in my opinion. We lost races by as much as 6 votes in one place, 24 in another. And when you divert $650,000 out from under the feet of our candidates across Kentucky, in my opinion, that could have been the very decisive difference in those races.
Do you think he was being selfish?
Well, look, he has to answer that question on his own. I waited because my focus was on our members. November the 6th, I traveled all across the state. It would seem selfish and self-interest to go out there on your own before November the 6th, file in June, and then raise $600,000 out from under the feet of our members. I think it's wrong, and yes, I think it's self-serving.
Well, we're going to end the segment talking a little basketball. Rocky played in college. He was pretty good. So the NCAA released its first ever net rankings, and the Cats didn't even make the top 10. Unlike the AP poll, Kentucky came in at number 61. Now, it's supposed to be an alternative to the RPI system that the NCAA uses to seed the tournament. But Rocky, whatever thing that has Ohio State as number 1, Loyola at 10, and Radford ahead of Kentucky, it's ridiculous, isn't it?
Well, it's completely ridiculous. The NCAA rankings on this, we know that the University of Kentucky, they're going to be at the top. They're going to be competing every night. They got an outstanding team that's going to do nothing but get better. These rankings mean nothing right now.
Do you think Kentucky can win the national championship? Does this look like a team that can do it?
Well, right now they don't look like a team, but you know, Coach Cal, he knows how to mold these teams. He knows how to put them together. And they actually have, you know, some experience on this team, which I like. Last year they didn't, all freshmen. This year, you know, they have some experience, and I think that will be the difference if they move forward. And yes, they will be able to compete for a national championship.
A lot of people don't know this. They call Rocky Atkins the Keldon Johnson of Morehead State. He could take it to the basket in his day. Now up next on Hey Kentucky, we'll just talk a little bit more politics with Rocky. Why did he enter the governor's race, and why does he think he is the one to take out Matt Bevin? That's right after this.